It's such an honor and an opportunity for us to be broadcasting live from our studios here in Muizenberg, Fischhoek. And it's time now for me to say a very good morning to Dr. Laura Fisher. How you doing, Doc?
Good morning, Jonathan. I'm just down the road from you, actually. I'm doing really well.
Oh, fantastic. If I'd known that, I would have invited you to come to our studios,
Yeah,
but this is
I
also
could have
good.
actually come. I'm just in Fischhoek.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Oh, that's good. Well, Dr. Laura, one of the things that we need to talk about is our expectations and how much of those expectations, either to succeed or to fail, impacts on our final outcome. Researchers have seen that expectations of others can have a surprising influence on behavior and outcomes. In fact, people tend to live up to both the expectations that they have of themselves and that others have of them. So to help us unpack this a little bit more, Dr. Laura Fisher, who heads the Institutional Advancement at Boston City campus, joins us now via StreamYard. So how do expectations influence performance?
Well, I think you pretty much summarized it, Jonathan. It's exactly as you said. The power of expectations is absolutely unbelievable. When somebody expects you to do well, it has an incredible impact on how well you really do. When you expect yourself to do well, you do tend to perform better than when you go into a situation with really self-defeating thoughts and ideas. And before you've even got the job done, you've already defeated yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, of course, it's great when we speak to school learners, varsity students, etc. But can this translate into the workplace, and can expectations extend to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you bring up that this translates into the school environment and into the university environment, and then into the workplace, because it absolutely translates itself across a whole variety of settings. And in your introduction, you mentioned how research shows over and over again the power that expectations really have. And so, whether it be in whatever context you find yourself in, the same kind of power of expectation seems to be very pervasive. So, one of the really interesting studies that come out of the field of psychology is a study that was done in the late 60s, where a very famous psychologist took a group of teachers at a school, and he told the teachers that he had identified a group of learners that had been given a special test, and this particular group of learners would have an intellectual growth spurt in the up and coming year. In actual fact, the researchers had given the students a standard IQ test and had randomly selected a bunch of who they considered academically promising students who were no more or less academically promising than the other students. And at the end of the year, these students who had been randomly labeled as intellectually promising showed a marked improvement in all areas of study. Even their IQs increased significantly. And this effect was called the Pygmalion effect. And the phenomenon has been tracked across all settings. So your question was, do we see this at work in the workplace? And absolutely, we see this at work in the workplace. Most of us have had the experience where we have a boss who really believes in us and believes in our ability to do great things. And boom, we find ourselves doing great things. Equally so when we work for someone who just seems to expect the worst of us all the time. Doesn't seem to matter how hard we try, we just always seem to kind of fall short. So this Pygmalion effect has really replicated itself beyond the school environment, beyond the university environment, into fields as diverse as the military, sports, banks. The expectations of a person in leadership positions influences the performance of others, be it students, be it employees, be it soldiers, be it sports people, parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenally powerful.
It really is. And I love that you've highlighted that research that's been done. And again, it shows how powerful words are and how powerful that whole scenario is. So you've kind of touched on it already, but I'd like to just delve a little deeper, and then we've got to wrap up because we're running out of time quite quickly. But parents and caregivers definitely play an important and instrumental role in children's lives, children's growth, development, etc., etc. Can a parent's expectations also impact how well their child does in school?
It's an interesting question, because I do absolutely think that it comes into play. And on the extreme sides of parents who just have who are disengaged and who expect their kids just to be naughty little, these naughty kids that they always seem to be behaving as, that does tend to translate itself into a school environment. But there's
Yeah,
also a whole host of other factors that come into play there. So I'm always a little bit tentative, being a parent myself, to place too much expectation and too much parental guilt on parents, in saying that the expectations of parents is the sum total of how well your child performs at school. But certainly it does have a profound impact on how your child views themselves, to use words of affirmation and to expect the best of them. And I
sure.
definitely see it play itself out in my own home. If I'm in a bad space and I'm just sick and tired of the kids being ratty and argumentative, and all of a sudden you've created the very scenario that you've been trying to avoid, where
Mm,
everyone's ratty and argumentative. Whereas if you actually go outside, and we often do this actually as a family, and you take a very deep breath and you look
mm.
up at the sky above your head, and you realize you have one big beautiful life to live, and you take a deep breath in to that unfolding sky, you sort of recalibrate your perspective, and you're able to perform a whole lot better than you would have been otherwise.
Brilliant. I love it. For those who've maybe just joined us, we're chatting to Dr. Laura Fisher all about expectations, the impact that they have on our lives. And sometimes, people will say to you, well, I don't think you can get that right. And then you know what? You probably won't get it right, because that's also an expectation placed on you. As we wrap up, Dr. Laura, I just wanted to ask one last quick question, and that is to do with how we can start developing more positive expectations for ourselves.
Yeah. Um, I was just reflecting on my previous answer about parenthood, and I went into a little bit of a more reflexive space. And just to say that the bottom line to that question is that research also shows that when parents expect great things of their kids, they actually do perform better across the
Wow.
sciences. So
Wow.
the hard facts are that yes, parental expectation has a powerful role to play. So if you don't mind me interjecting that just at
No, that's good.
before I jump into, um, I was thinking about how to answer the question, and I obviously could speak about it extensively. I think the simplest way to put it is that the way we think and the way we construct our internal reality is what plays itself out in our external reality. So our thoughts create our reality, and then step away from us and say to us, you did it. But in actual fact, they did it. So that's the power of the thinking mind. And so I think the biggest way that we impact our lives is by watching our thought life, and by ensuring that we create a space for ourselves within ourselves, where we are thinking about ourselves in a way that is compassionate, that is positive, that believes in oneself, that is optimistic, that believes
Yeah.
we have one life to live.
Yeah.
We have one opportunity to walk on this earth with our eyes wide open to this big, beautiful life. And that's what we really teach the students at Boston: is you get one life, live your dreams, pursue them with radical abandon, because your deepest fear is not that you are small, actually the thing we have to come to terms with is that you are powerful beyond measure. And when we live with that sort of outlook, we're able to really do something quite significant with our lives.
Dr. Laura Fisher, thank you so much. It's a beautiful way to end this conversation. Obviously, there's a lot more we could talk about, but maybe someday in the future we can take it up. Dr. Laura Fisher is the head of institutional advancement at Boston City campus. Thank you so much for your time, and we wish you and your family all the best.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for your time too. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye now.